Cool. I'll take this out here. That goes there. Fine. We'll start with React training, bench start. Okay, and what else? We got this. That's pretty much it. And then we can start the React dev server. Okay, before we start, I think what we'll cover today is socket event listeners, login page routing, how to make OAuth and stuff, and also, best practices, performance optimizations, edge cases when it comes to, fetching data, etc. Um, Till then, before we start, if someone has some questions or something, please ask them right now. So either questions about the previous 3 days or any topics that that you would like me to cover today. And then tomorrow, we can just cover some some out of the box topics, right? Uh, Anyone? Okay. Um, Error and handling, yes. Okay, let's do that today, right? So today whatever pages etc. we create, we'll handle errors in it, right? The error handling is already tackled by Frappe React SDK. We are just not showing it to the user. We can do that today. So today let's start with uh, our login page, right? So far, if you look at if Saurav's here, I think I uploaded the day one recording twice. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you will see day one recording there, right? The original link might have been deleted. So I deleted one of those videos. Um, uh, so one of you asks, I'm asking user permission error. Can you please help to resolve? Okay, it's most probably the fact that you're not logged in, right? So maybe after today's session you wouldn't face that issue. And then Midot says how to show data from multiple docs. I'm not entirely sure what that would entail, but let's see. So okay, so 2026, and then let's say 2018. Yeah. So far, if you go to just localhost 8080 or for that matter 8026 slash scope, you're taken to a blank page, right? We've been ignoring that for a while now. And if you go to slash projects or slash tasks, that's actually when you come up with this. Okay, before we do that, if you remember yesterday, there was an issue. So I'd solved that issue just right after the call or right after the training and posted the solution on the chat. So the issue was with the priority selector, right? That update doc was being called multiple times, especially because when we added search in our task list and we made the key an array, right? We weren't able to mutate all keys. If we were mutating all keys, it was calling this promise multiple times. So what we did was we extracted the promise over here, right? And then our key is now function when we are mutating it. And we say, okay, wherever you get task list, just mutate task list multiple, wherever the first element in that key is a task list, just find that and use the same promise, but in the promises dot then, return the new tasks, right? So again, this code seems very complicated, but remember that this is something that, like you would only do when you're like, doing some advanced level stuff. This is not really needed when you are, let's say, when you're just developing normally, because normally you would just use the real-time listener and you would use Frappe update doc. So that's like just two lines of code. But if you were to care about, like if you were to actually fine tune the performance and, fine tune the UX, then you would do things like optimistic data and stuff. Having said that, with the new hooks in Frappe React SDK, you wouldn't even have to do this. This would just come inbuilt. So, yeah, that was the solution. Just taking out the promise outside of the call block. Um, Okay, let's see about the login page first, right? And our routing. So in our main.tsx, what we have done is that we are saying that uh, on line number 15, right? That just render the app. The app is nothing but the Frappe provider and the outlet, so nothing else over here. So what we need to do is we need to create a login page, right? So we can say that the path is login and the element is the actual login page. So at least if we do that, um, if I go to slash login, it at least takes me here. Now, the point being that if the user is logged in, then we probably don't want them to see the login page in the first place. So in the login page, what we can do is we can create a use effect. So, and we can say that if there is a current user, so whenever the current user changes, right? Uh, if there is a current user, we need to navigate to uh, the the projects page, right? Let's take them to the projects page for now. So we can do something like, so there is a hook in React router called as use navigate, right? In use navigate, it would return navigate, I believe. Yeah. So we can just say navigate to slash projects, but in our options, we'll say replace the path in the browser router. So in the browser, let's not even, let's just replace the path. So when that happens, if I go to slash login, it will redirect back to slash projects, right? Uh, let's see what happens if we log out though. If we log out, then, and we haven't made logout from there, but if we log out, I go to slash login, it takes me here. But if I go to slash projects, it takes me here. Now there's an error that's being thrown, and that error we are not showing over here, right? So it's usually a permission error, right, or an unauthenticated error, or something like that. Let's see, yeah. So the error is a permission error, right? Uh, Ideally, we would not like to show this page in the first place, right? If the user is not logged in. So we'll create a component called as protected route, right? And go to main. Um, we'll create a component called as protected route, and then we'll somehow have to, wrap all of these into that, right? So um, let's see. We do this, and these two go in children. Something like this. I don't know if that works, but let's see. Yeah. So if I go to slash projects, it takes me now it shows protected route, right? We will obviously use an outlet, but what usually happens is that you will have login page, sign up page, forgot password page, everything outside, right? And then over here, you'll wrap everything into a protected route. That protected route can also, contain your sidebar because you usually do not want to show a top bar and a sidebar, uh, if the user is logged out, right? But you only want to show it when the user is logged in. So we can actually create that. Uh, so for this, we can create a page, but it's not really a page. It's not technically a page. I'll just create a file directly, and I'll call it protected route, right? And then over here, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to call the outlet. Um, so this is my protected route, and then I can replace this protected route over here. Cool. Now there will not be any difference at all, right? But now the protected route needs to do something. So we can do like use uh, Frappe auth, and we can say current user, right? And then we can say, hey, if there is a current user, then render this, right? Else you can say that, render a div with a card or something and not logged in or whatever, right? And you can give them a redirect back to the login page with a button or something. That's what Frappe also does. If I go to slash app, um, see, it says login to access this page, and then you click on login. Uh, Similarly, it also sets a redirect to, you can also do the same over here because you will have the path. So you can give a button to redirect them back to the login page. But if it's logged in, just return the outlet, right? What you would do later is that you would, if you wanted to make a sidebar and stuff, you would actually wrap this into a sidebar, right? So you would say something like this. The sidebar would be here, and let's log in. And actually, yeah, yeah. Let's log in, and then it takes you over here. You would then do your styling and stuff, and make the sidebar, and then the projects are here, right? Maybe a top bar as well. So all of that, all of those pieces can come in over here with your outlet. So all you've done is that in main.tsx you've just mapped, right? So you've just taken projects and tasks and put them inside protected route. In fact, all of your protected routes would be over here. That's pretty much it. But that was routing. Not a big deal, as you can see. We'll get rid of the sidebar for now. I mean, once this app is actually ready, we'll need to finish that. But yeah. Okay. Also, this can be a link from React Router, uh, because then it will. So instead of using the A tag, we're using the link tag because the link tag will take care of the base path, right? On production, it should be slash scope slash login, right? Not slash login directly. So this will take care of that. Yeah, that was routing. Let's see what else can we do. Okay, so now on the login page, how about we um, see? Yeah, on the login page, we can now add support for other things like OAuth and stuff, right? For that though, we need to look at how Frappe itself handles OAuth. Let me pull up Frappe's stuff and let's go to login.html. Okay, you look at login.html, right? And uh, they'll do things like if social login or login with email, right? And then they have this for provider in provider logins, right? Actually, what's happening is that in login.py, they've actually set context here, providers, right? And then they're getting this client secret and all of that, and they're checking if there's a client secret or not, right? If there's a provider, then they're getting the icon HTML. Uh, and they're setting all of that in context, and then all the login page does is just render A tags with the auth URL, right? Uh, if you were to do this on a React app, refer to Raven, but in Raven as well, what we have done for the login page is we actually fetch the context, and we had to create a separate uh, file for this. So you go to login.py and we created a get context file, right? Which does the same thing. We actually copied the whole thing from Frappe's login.py, right? And the only difference that we did was we don't need the no cache over here, but the only thing that we did was we changed the get context to a whitelisted method, uh, so that we can provide these to our React app. So the React app fetches all of this and then renders the page. Uh, you look at the login page over here, and I'll get rid of this. So all of this is email password we have also done, right? Uh, but look at this social login. So if there are, provider logins, all we are doing is just creating links, right? These are just links with the auth URL. And that's pretty much all you need to do, right? The auth URL, if you look at the redirect URL, the redirect to is also something that we handle. So I don't know if we need to cover this because then I'll have to set up OAuth on my local machine, and I don't really have an OAuth provider readily available. Um, but yeah, but if you would like me to cover it, we could technically. For now, we can look at the error banner and see if that works. So we'll take this error banner. Yeah. It will be in common. We'll just say error banner. So I've just pasted it from there, mainly because it's already got everything that we need. We just need this error call out, right? So we'll go to Shatcn again and figure out if they have an alert or something. Yeah, they do have something like that. We'll take this one. We need to install this as well, sorry. Nope. Okay. Once that's happening, I'll close this. Yeah. Let's bring in alert, alert title, alert description, and alert triangle icon, right? Alert title could be anything, but for this at least we have this. We can remove this, remove the invalid import. Uh, okay. This is not really needed to be honest, but keep that. What else is there? Well, we'll need all of this, so I don't know what the issue. I mean, we'll not need it right now, but eventually, you'll need it. And I'll tell you exactly where you'll need it as well. Uh, if you look at this, so one of the problems with Frappe's error handling is that the returned output is usually in HTML, right? So they'll make something bold or italic or whatever, right? So this is not really recommended normally, right? When we do dangerously set inner HTML because it could lead to injection attacks, right? But in this case, since the error itself is coming from the backend, we can theoretically do this. But a better approach for this would be to use something like a markdown renderer, right? A markdown renderer or an HTML renderer of some sort that actually parses the data, removes the script tags so that uh, there's no injection, you know, like attackers cannot actually inject arbitrary code onto your site and then use that as your description. So you'll see that this is a problem right now that we're doing dangerously set inner HTML. Ideally, just use something like a markdown renderer or a tip tap or something like that to render the HTML, right? Um, so if you want to understand what this does is that it actually looks at all the different variables that we get from an error, right? And the error is a type of Frappe error, which is defined in Frappe React SDK. Looks at server messages, then passes those server messages, right? And then maps those. And then each and every server message itself is a string that's JSON. So it again tries to do that. Um, then if there is no server messages, then it looks at the exception. And then from the exception, it looks at the first colon because usually what happens is that they'll say frappe.exceptions the permission error colon, and then you need the actual text. So it gets the index of the first colon, gets the exception, and then uses that. Else, finally, it will just use the error message, right? So that's the whole thing. We can, let's see. Yeah, we can just call this error, I guess. So let's use this error banner on our project page, maybe. So how to handle errors in Frappe React SDK? You just get the error object from and whatever hook you're using, right? And then once you have that error object, you just place your error banner. Just do this. Cool. Now, obviously, this won't throw an error, so let's make it throw an error. I'll just change the name of the field or something, just so that it throws an error. So you get this, right? Now the error is actually formatted. If you want to look at the actual error, sorry, the the error that's thrown by, yeah, look at the actual error over here, right? Server messages, field not permitted in query, and there's so many trading slashes and stuff. Uh, so yeah, instead of showing all of this, we actually pull it from here. And this will work with certain scenarios. What happens is that uh, like Frappe will throw multiple errors. Uh, I've seen this used extensively in ERPNext, wherein it will just add to the messages, and then the server messages has multiple messages, so you get multiple errors at once. This will also handle that. Um, yeah. Now, what about this other thing that I was talking about? If you go to error banner, you'll see there's this function called get error message, and then there's this another function called get error messages. It does the same thing that's happening over here, uh, and the reason why we have created these is that sometimes you only want to show errors in a toast, right? And you don't want to show a banner, but you only want to show a toast. So it's for those reasons, as well as sometimes what if you look at Frappe, Frappe allows you to do something called as Frappe.message print. And in Frappe.message print, you get yellow color, green color. You can set the indicator color for these toasts. You could also theoretically handle that, and that can be handled in any API call because there's no restriction. So if you uh, let's say that again, I'm giving an example of ERPNext because that's where I've seen it being used. If you enable, let's say, advanced accounting, right, or advanced party accounting in your company, and let's say in your payment entry, uh, you're making a payment to let's say a supplier, and it's an advance payment, so Frappe or ERPNext will automatically change the account, right? And then once you do that, it will show a small toast at the bottom right, uh, and it's usually in green in color or something, right? The API call was successful, but it still showed that toast, so that won't be a part of error handling. For that, what you would have to do is you would have to, let's say I go to my create project button, right? We have this create doc. You would have to handle that in .then, wherein you'll get the response, and then according to the response, you'll show the toast. What we have done in our projects is that we have created a common handler for those toasts as well that takes in any server messages, because server messages are not only available in errors, but they're also available in regular API calls. So that's a good to know. Okay, any questions so far about the login page routing as well as error handling?
Maybe one, what does the use effect exactly do? Like, what would be the
Yeah.
difference of
So,
calling
okay.
navigate directly?
Yeah, yeah. Let's see. Where do I show this? Maybe I can show this on the tasks page. So let's say that I have a filter for subject, right? And sorry, for status. And I don't know what the statuses can be in a task. Uh, Status can be open. Let's just consider three or four of them, right? Open, overdue, completed, cancelled. So open, completed, and cancelled are available. Fine. So let me create a state variable for these. I won't wire it up. I'm just setting it like this. Status, set status. Okay. So, uh, in this case, right, whenever status changes, the entire component re-renders because it's a state variable and it's being consumed over here, right? If I go to slash tasks, yeah, if I change the status, the entire thing actually re-renders, right? Sometimes what we might want to do is that we might want to run effects and we might want to run cleanups as well. What that means is an effect is nothing but whenever there is a re-render, right? So there are two. Let's consider the very basic effect over here, right? So console.log ran effect, and it's just use effect, and there is nothing, just a function, right? No second parameter.
Mhm.
Let's see what the impact is. So by default, ran effect has run 4 times, right? That effect, that function ran 4 times, right? And then whenever I make a change to the state variable, it runs. In fact, I
Yeah.
can change anything, right? And it will run, right? So without a dependency array, which is the second parameter. So the use effect, if you look at the definition, the effect is your function, and then there is a dependency list, right? The dependency array. That if you do not mention that, then it will run on every re-render, right? The the difference between, I mean, this will also run on every re-render then. I mean, your question would be ran effect outside. What's the point then, right? This also runs on every re-render. Let's see. See, this also runs. You can ignore the ones that are slightly grayed out. I think that's just we doing something. The problem with that is that use effect allows you to also clean up effects, right? So during rendering, so it will render, it will run the effect, and then when the next effect needs to run, it will clean up the previous effect. What I mean by clean up is that this function can actually return another function, right? And it can say clean up. So, and I'll remove this line number 21. So let's see. If I change to open to completed, right? So you see, first it ran the cleanup, then it ran the new effect. If I do completed to cancelled, again, first it ran the cleanup, then it ran the effect. Now you can actually check, how it's doing that if I just print the status. So let's remove this again. So I'm on cancelled. If I go to open, it first ran the cleanup for the cancelled effect, right? That ran when cancelled was there. Then it ran the effect for open. Similarly, it did the same, right over here. Now, obviously, we don't want it to run every time this is typed. We only want it to run, let's say, whenever the status is changed, right? So in that case, we can add the dependency array over here, and we can say only run this effect when any of these values in the array changes, in the dependency list changes.
Mhm.
So now if I do that, if I type, the effect doesn't run, right? But if I do this, then the effect runs. Now you might be wondering, okay, what's the use for this, right? One of the uses was that we actually debounced this, right? You look at this, we all we did was, okay, whenever the value changes, the delay we've just added, but the delay will usually be constant. So whenever the value changes, start a timer, right? If the value changes again, remove the previous timer. So what this is doing is that it's starting the timer. As soon as the user types something else, it clears the original timer, right? So that this never gets run. And then it starts another timer, right? So cleanup effect, cleanup effect. So we are using it over here. That's a good example. The other option could be, let's say if you were building a chat room, and you had a page wherein, at the top you're selecting who you're chatting with, right? Now, whenever you enter the chat room, you need to subscribe to some socket event, right, to that channel. And then when you're leaving the chat room, you actually need to, unsubscribe from those socket events. And that's exactly what useEffect could help you with, right?
Mhm.
In fact, in Frappe React SDK, we are doing the same thing. I'll show that. So all of these hooks that we have use doc type or document event listener, for example. The formatting is all off, so forget about that. But you see, in our use effect, we are doing, we are emitting the doc subscribe events, we are emitting the doc open events, right? And then in the cleanup, right? Let's say the doc ID changes, we are then, doing the unsubscribe and the doc close events. We are emitting those. So same logic, right, as the chat room. So whenever a user comes into a document, have them subscribe. If the document ID changes, run the cleanup of the previous one. So unsubscribe from the previous status or from the previous document name, and then the new effect runs. So that's how use effect works.
Perfect. Very useful. Thanks.
So next is if we use basic token authentication, not actually OAuth, but combination of API key and secret of user. Is there any way to expand? Yeah, the way is OAuth, right? So Neeraj's question, do not use API key and secret anywhere in your client-side code. That's such a bad practice. I cannot reiterate that enough, right? I've seen a lot of people actually make mobile apps wherein they fetch the API secret for that particular user and store it on the device. There is no way of you to actually, invalidate that token, uh, you know, if they have, like, if you wanted to invalidate the token, the only option is to actually create a new token, a new API key and secret, right? Don't use that. Always use OAuth, right? Make your entire Frappe app an OAuth client. This is especially useful for like just create this, right? For mobile apps, at least this is what we do, right? When the Raven mobile app is launched, what will happen is that Raven will automatically create an OAuth client in the background. Because with OAuth client, you can actually set scopes and you can control the token validity, right? So don't use API key and secret, not recommended at all. Um, Instead of handling error on each page by calling error banner, can we have error boundary at parent level? Yes, you can, but that's a very bad user experience. I'll tell you why. In some cases, maybe it makes sense. Let me close this. Okay. Mm, I'll get. I'll keep this just for. Oh, in fact, if we're doing this, yeah. Okay. Now the status filter also works. Fine. So, error handling on each page. The problem is that let's say that there was an error. Wait, what happened? I don't have any completed. Okay. Yeah. Let's say that there was an error, right? And if you handle the error banner at a higher level, what uh, what Saruka means is do something like this. There's something called as an error boundary. Oh, this is Raven. Yeah. Yeah. I'll handle that in protected route for now. So I think it's error boundary or something. I don't know where we've implemented it, but React router error boundary, right? Okay, now they've made it error element. Yeah, so you can set an error element for each route, but I don't want this. Mm, or maybe it was the error element, who knows? Okay, I think we used to use error boundary earlier. Anyway, we can do this. Yeah, error element, the p tag. There was an error. Okay, I don't know if that works, but let's say if I go to projects, I can do something like I'll need to throw an error, right? So in that case, you would do, let's just do this if, I don't know if that works or not, but let's see. Uh, it's a very crude example, don't follow that actually, but yeah. See, now it shows there was an error banner over here, right? The problem is that this error banner actually takes up the entire page. You can make it all, fancy and everything, but then I forget, which page I'm on. So I'm not in favor of that for errors like these. For errors where, the error is because of, something was wrong in an API call. I don't handle errors like that. The error boundary that I recommend is that you do need an error element, but make that for things like, uh, let's say programming errors, wherein let's say, they were accessing something undefined, right? So instead of showing a blank page, you can show an error element in your protected route. For those cases, use the error boundary, but from a UX perspective, don't use error boundaries or don't throw errors, for API calls. Imagine someone was, creating a project in that pop-up and it threw an error, right? You wouldn't want them to lose the entire pop-up and the data, right? Or the entire form data. You would want to just show the error in a banner or something, right? But you do need to add an error element just in case something goes wrong, right? Usually it's like programming errors. Sometimes it's also because of skewing. What's skewing is that, uh, let's say I built version 1 of my app and I deploy it, right? The user that's using my app has version 1, so the files that they use, so if I go to localhost this, yeah. In fact, let's look at all the JS files. So the JS files that they have is over here, right? Then what happens, and let's say that you were doing some lazy loading, etc. You were doing code splitting and stuff. So you have multiple JS files, right? Uh, and then let's say that you wanted to do something like you updated your version, you deployed another update, but the user that's using your app is still on version 1. So they were referring to an index file that doesn't exist anymore, right? Especially in their code, right? Some index file that they haven't loaded on their browser, right? But it's code splitting, so that it doesn't exist, that will throw an error. And so you need to give them a proper error boundary that says, hey, we have deployed a new update, do you want to refresh, right? This is called as queue protection. It's a feature by Vercel, but I'll just share what they have done, right? You don't need Vercel for that, but you can read about what's queue protection, right? So, basically you get, from old clients after a deployment. So that's SKU protection they have. I'll also copy this and share that. So they handle it automatically, right? We don't need to handle it automatically. We can, uh, we can just show like an error banner that handles the error and says, look, the user, you have a new update. Just click refresh. Once they refresh, it's not a problem. But with single page apps, usually users do not refresh at all, right? They're just on the app forever. So that's what you would use error boundaries for. The other thing that Jamvi reminded me is that you can also make 404 pages. So if you wanted to make a 404 page, you can do something like star, right? And this path will, so if none of these paths actually match, then this will use this path, right? So see, if not this, yeah. If I go to, let's say, slash whatever, it takes me to not found, right? Instead of showing an application error. The other thing that you could try to do is something like make it dynamic. So you can make something like slash doc type slash doc name, right? And make this dynamic. These are dynamic routings that you can read about React Router. And then, if they go to just slash doc type, then you can show me the list page. If they just see, doc name with the doc type, then you can show the actual form. Very rarely would you actually need to build this, because then, if you're doing such a generic thing, then why even build on React, right? The Frappe interface is perfectly fine. Um, but if you wanted to, make some generic parts, you can do it like that. So that's this React Router basics. Let's actually keep our star over here because eventually we need it. Uh, when I make use frappe get call inside the use effect, it gives me error. Yeah, but why are you making use frappe get call inside use effect? That's a good segue to uh, this. So let's see. Where can we do that? Okay. The use case is that, let's say that I want to make an API call whenever the status changes, right? Uh, and I don't want to make that API call when the hmm. Okay, so I want to make the API call when something happens, but I don't want to make that API call, on mount, right? Usually that's the use case, right? Abhishek. So when I make use frappe get call inside the use effect, you cannot use frappe get call inside use effect because use frappe get call is a hook, right? Hooks cannot be called conditionally in React. In fact, the way React works is that it looks at the order of the hooks. And so it's important that none of these hooks are actually called conditionally. I cannot do something like if, XYZ, then do this. Can't do that, right? Cannot have hooks inside for loops or anything, right? They need to be at the top level. So but then the question is, how do you, make, let's say, get calls at least, uh, if you wanted to, do that on a button click or something, right? Let's try doing that over here. There are two options. I'll create a button for now, um, and on click, so fetch user data. This is like just I'm just coding whatever now. One option is that you can do use frappe get call, right? And what was the API for profile? Someone was telling me. Uh, what is it? Profile API or something? Nope, nope, nothing like that exists. Anyway, let me just do a frappe.client.get value, right? I want to do a frappe.client.get value, and yeah, something like this, right? I want to do this. Now, the point over here is that you look at this API call and where's my button? Okay. Yeah. You look at this API call. This API call will happen as soon as I mount the page, right? So inspect network. Mm, oh, I'm just looking at this. Sorry. Yeah. See, frappe.client.getValue gets mounted, so this is a common problem. So what we do is we can say, in the SWR key, we can actually pass it a key of null, right? If you pass it a key of null, then this API call will not get triggered, right? So see that API call did not get triggered, did not trigger. So the main way that we use this is, uh, let's say you wanted to use Frappe get call, but you do not want to fetch this until something else changes. Let's say if there is status, right, then you want to fetch it, so you can pass it undefined. That is, you're just reverting back to default. But if there's no status, then don't fetch, don't make this API call. So you can control that using SWR keys. Uh, yeah. So now let's say if I change the status, see, now it runs this code. That's one option. Usually you wouldn't want to do this either. You might want to, fetch some data and then, perform a dot then or whatever, right? For that, always remember that in Frappe React SDK, right? Frappe JS SDK is inbuilt. So you can use context. For those of you who do not know context, context is like global state, but it's managed by React. There's a context API that's available, right? You declare a context. So we have already done this. We've done this in our app.tsx component at the very top, you know, Frappe provider. This Frappe provider is setting up a context, and then we expose Frappe context over here. I'll just name the type as Frappe config. Over here, you can get all the methods that are available in JS SDK as well. So, for example, call, DB, file, I don't know what else. You can get the socket as well. URL, auth, token params. You can get all of those as read only. But basically, if I were to, on that button click, if I want to fetch something, right, I can do this. So frappe.client.get, something like this, right? Call.get, because I want to make a get call. So remember that in Frappe React SDK, if you just use context and Frappe context, right, all of the methods that's available in Frappe JS SDK is available to you. So you can do something like this. Obviously, this is not going to be cached because it's not being used by SWR, right? For that, we might add support using SWR mutable, uh, but let's see. Oh wait, something's gone wrong. Oh, okay, one extra bracket. Yeah. So now I can do. Hmm. Am I doing frappe.client.getValue? Oh, yeah. Now the API call, my parameters might be wrong, right? So something like this, yeah. So now you can make API calls, and so these are not cached, and you usually do not want them to be cached as well because they are usually done on user request, so there's no actual point in caching it. So this is how you can, make get calls, post calls, etc. using Frappe React SDK. with Frappe.js SDK inbuilt, right? Post call, etc., you probably don't need to do this, but for get call, sometimes it's required to do. So we use it this way. In SWR, there is a hook as well called as the SWR mutable or immutable hook. Yeah, use SWR mutation. So remote mutations are triggered manually. Oh no, not this one. Update cache after mutation. No, there's an immutable hook as well. I forgot where that is. Conditional data fetching. Yeah, you can read conditional data fetching to, to figure out how you want to do it, but no, probably no. Forget where it is. It's somewhere over here. Use SWR. Some immutable hook, or maybe they've removed it. Immutable mode, yeah. So they have this immutable mode. So I think it's over here. Yeah. If you wanted to, stop the revalidation on mount, right? So you can also do that with if you wanted the cache, but you also wanted it to not revalidate on mount, but only when you click a button, right? You can do something like, let me try it with this. I'll remove this on click, right? And remove this as well. And then in SWR option, so for SWR key, I'll just pass it undefined. I don't have a parameter here, but I'll say revalidate on mount is false. Okay. I have the mutate over here. In my button, I can just say fetch data, right? So now if I go back to my localhost 8080 and I refresh, so I don't have any data, right? No API calls were made. And if I do fetch data, then are we throwing an error or something? Or was the error? Or data.map is not a function. Why is it not a function? Let's bring data for now. Okay, if I do fetch data, oh, okay. Yeah, I was passing it, parameters. Yeah, if I do fetch data, then now it's fetching. Right? Now this is using the cache. So you can also do this. So if you do not want to fetch data on mount, just pass revalidate on mount as false, and then just call mutate every time. So whenever you want to do it, this will use the cache. The other option that I showed with the Frappe.js SDK with the context won't use the cache because it's not using SWR. I hope that makes sense, and don't call these hooks inside effects, etc. Doesn't work. Is that clear, Abhishek? Okay. Neeraj says, do we create a global error component or function in Frappe to format error that we can use in all API? Uh, yes. So that's what we did, right? We created this error banner. I mean, that's exactly what it does. Just pass it the error and you're good to go, right? So we use this error banner everywhere. This is a global error component, and similarly, we also have some functions, utility functions, rather than, just showing an error banner. Maybe if we want to just take that string and show it in a toast, then we can do it. For toasts, I would recommend you to use whatever Shatsian has, but not the default toast that they have. Not this. They have something called a sauna, right? This is a really, really cool toast. You can have like, promised based toasts. Um, yeah. So you can have, let's say a promise based toast that once it's done, it then shows something like that. You can have success based toast, errors, etc. And with actions as well. And again, pretty nice toast component. I would say that, use this. Some questions that I might have missed. How to do API call to SMS payment gateway and receive the response from front end. Don't make an API call from the front end to the SMS payment gateway. Make it to the back end, right? So your React app will call to the back end. The back end will then make your call to whatever gateway. Mainly because if you expose all of those, keys and secrets and URLs on the front end, people can abuse it. So, yeah, make an API call to the backend, and then your backend will actually make the actual API call. Can we customize Frappe error from Frappe? What do you mean by customize? Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what we did over here, right? Uh, Let me show it again. So, let's see. See, field not permitted in query. This is readable. This is pretty much readable, right? You obviously won't get errors like this, right? Your errors will be, something that the backend throws. This is like a very stupid error. That's why it's, I mean, but still, this is readable. This is way better than what Frappe returns by default. That is, frappe.exceptions.data error, right? I mean, we want everything after that. So this is readable, in my opinion. Uh, If you wanted to change it, then in your APIs, yes, you can change it, right? You would throw different error messages. But on the front end, then, there's there can be thousands of errors, right? Error messages that Frappe throws. How will you, one option is to add translations, but yeah, you're just getting into crazy territory there. So I don't know. This is pretty readable. There might be something else that I missed. Okay, how to show data from multiple docs. Midhat, do you have an example of that? Like showing data from multiple docs, what do you mean? And how to deal with child table records, read, update, delete. Yes, that I can cover. That's simple. But how to show data from multiple docs, let's cover that first because I don't know what multiple docs means. Okay, regarding child tables, right? Oh God, it's always project. Yeah. Regarding child tables, let's see that if we can, populate this users table, right? Yeah, like in project, you want to show task data. Uh, there are two or three options that you have. One is that you create a custom API, right? And then you call that custom API using useWrapper get call. It takes in the project ID and then it returns the entire set of data to you. The other is that you can do useWrapper get doc for the project, and then wherever you're showing the list of tasks, you can do useWrapper get doc list with filters, You can either make a custom API call there. It's up to you how you want to, handle that. So in some cases we are showing, in our project we are showing this connections tab, right? So the connections tab is a separate API call. I think it's get dashboard data or something like that, right? So you have multiple options. If you make just one API call, that also works, but sometimes it makes it very difficult to work with forms. So the other option could be, use Frappe get doc for your project, let's say data, and then you do use Frappe get call or use Frappe get doc list for your tasks, or get doc count for your tasks, right? You can have as many hooks as you want to. Okay, let's see. Let's look at the child table thing, right? So we'll try to, when we are creating the project, we'll try to add users, right? So let's go to create project button. I have a form over here. Let me create a user table component, project user field, right? So in React Hook form, there is something called as uh, use field array, and it's built for well field arrays, right? So in this case, we have a form component, so we can do use field array, right? Remember that use field array can be used inside, inside the form component. In this case, Chatcn. So, but your form provider only, right? In React Hook form, you need to give a form provider. We'll call this. I don't know what the variable name is for project users. Is it just users? Yes. Actually, I think this will be an object. Name is users. Um, and then I can also give it a type if I like. I can say that this is of type project, but whatever. What we need is append, remove, and think that's it for now. We can also get from use form or use form context, sorry, we can get register because, but we probably won't need this. Yeah, sorry. So we have append and remove, and then let's say, and we'll have fields from use field array, right? Um, let's make it a, how do we, okay, let's make it a div, right? And then we can map fields, fields dot map. We can say yes. So we want to ideally return a div for each row, right? So actually, let's call it rows just so that it's clear. So the ID is generated automatically by reactive form. So this, and then we have this. Okay. And we have this form field that we created, right? Somewhere, link field. Let's do that. I think it's just a link field that for users. So doc type will be user. This will be row dot value and row dot on change. Oh, sorry, row dot field dot on change. Uh, let's see. I think they use some sort of naming convention or something. I mean, they use register, but I don't want to use register. I think above I've created a form field for this now. Interesting. Fine, we'll also create a form field. So for that I need form. My name. Okay. Now this is the tricky part. So in a field array, right? Our name will actually become array index. So it will be users dot, and then we can add the index, and then I don't know what the variable name for the actual user is. User. Okay. Yeah, just user. I don't need a form label. Um, my doc type will be user, and everything else is the same. Right now, append and remove, we'll use that, but for now, let's actually call project user field over here. Okay. So now append and remove, we'll need some plus buttons and delete buttons or whatever, right? So let's look at the delete buttons. I can have an icon, or I can have a button with an icon, or just this, and then variant can be destructive. And then for append, I'll need a button above, something like this. So I have a button above. Actually, I'll show because otherwise it's just confusing. Yeah. We have this add user button. Let's actually uh, plus circle, and then maybe this will be trash. Yeah. Okay. Now everything else is fine. We can, make it pretty. This can be variant is destructive, but what else do we have in button? Uh, Variant, they have size. Size, I would like it to be small. SM. And then even in variant, I would like it to be, ghost, right? So for now, I guess it's fine. And then over here as well, I would like this to be small, but the variant can be ghost. Yeah. So we have something now. Yep. It's not pretty, but it works, right? So now once you have this data, you can set a project. Oh, by the way, why is it throwing that error of it's required? Just make it a type of button, right? It's not a form button. So it's not a form submit button. So just make it type button, and then this shouldn't come up. So you do new, I'll call my project new project with users, and no project template. I'll select a user, pretty bad UI, do save changes. Now there was an error that was thrown. Let's see. Ah, okay. Please set up default email account. Now, see what we can do is we can also handle errors over here, right? So in use Frappe create doc, we have error. We can say that we need an error banner over here with the error. Ah, okay. Now see, we get this error banner, so that's nice. But to avoid this issue of the email account, what we could do is we can initialize the welcome email sent as one for now, right? Welcome email sent. Can you guys still see my screen? Not sure, my monitor just went out.
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah, okay. So I'll just initialize welcome email sent with one, just so that it doesn't throw that error. Let's see. New project with users. Let's select this. Save changes. Done. Right. Real-time events are not working, but this is there. If I go here, new project with users, there should be users. Yep. So that's your child table, the way you handle it. The thing is that the REST API supports the child table just like that, right? So you don't really need to do anything else. Um, let's see. Now my zoom and all, guess. I mean, now, yeah. I don't know where my zoom is. Hmm. Yeah, now it's here. Okay. Any new messages that are there? In doc type, I want a role should have a restricted access based on its attributes, like employees list based on attribute like gender. Yeah, you can do that using user permissions. So not related, not strictly related to Frappe, but so if you set a user permission over here, you can say for a particular user, employee or gender, right? In your case, I think it was gender for value, whatever, male, and then apply to all document types or only applicable for, let's say, employee, something like this. You can do that. Okay. What else? Any other questions that I missed? Okay, so should we move on to like performance and all of that? Like, how do we measure performance for React apps, or is there any other topic that you would like me to cover? Batch editing is the same, right? It's just like you can either create a custom API for batch editing, or you can, do it from the front end. I would recommend like a custom API to both fetch the data as well as update the data. Those are mostly, Frappe framework based. Uh, on the React side, there's nothing that's extra that you need to do, right? You'll just, make those API calls, etc. How to add comments? Again, any functionality that you would want to, take from this particular like interface, right? Just check what API call are they making. Hi, this is a comment. Uh, see, they're calling this API. You can also call this API then. Frappe.des.form.utils.add comment. Just call this API and you're done. Anything else that you would like me to cover? Because then we'll go into performance. And so just to be clear, we've covered, how to fetch data, how to upload or how to update data, right? And then we have looked at error handling. Uh, we also briefly, figure out use effect. Also handle 404 pages. Also handle routing for login pages. Um, what else? Yeah, conditional fetching using, use Frappe get call or using Frappe JS SDK within Frappe React SDK, right? The one thing that I would like to tell you is that, this might seem like a lot of code right now, especially, I mean, I was actually, just checking the other day that that I'm writing so much code when for my regular project I do not write as much code, right? And the reason is because the tooling over here was built from scratch, right? But once you have like these components, you have a component for a child table, you have a component for a list view, right? You usually do not, write a lot of code in the first place. So, for example, our we have components which we'll make it open source soon, but it's a lot of work to actually make them available to the public because they're built using various tech stacks. So, but over the last 3.5 years, we've built around 80 to 100 components, that are just Frappe specific. So we have components that render the timeline or that allow you to add a comment or, that render a calendar or a tree view. Um, we have components that render the entire form. So just pass it the doc type name and it will render the entire form. Uh, or just pass it the doc type name and it will render the list view. And in our list views and our child tables, etc., there are no restrictions of the number of columns that you can have. You can drag and drop columns. You can hide columns. You can have grouping within columns. We use AG grid for that. So again, uh, once you have these components ready and you've built these components correctly, you wouldn't need to write a lot of code. But till then, to build that tooling, it takes time. So yeah, hopefully soon we open source the entire components. Uh, can we cover how to store all CRUD operations from React app getting logged to Frappe? So do you mean like you want to log or like you want to have API logs, Ninad?
Yes, Nikhil. So basically, so within Frappe, what we have is whoever is changing anything on the Frappe, it gets covered, as in we get to know who has done what. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a logging mechanism, who has updated which information.
Okay, so
Considering
that
we
you
are
can.
using the same logging on React app, how can we do that? As in, can we communicate back to Frappe?
Yeah, what do you mean by same login? Like the user would be different, right?
So considering we are using for logging on our React app, if we are using the Frappe user.
Yeah. So you have a
Okay.
user, right?
Correct. Uh,
Yeah, and now you want
and
to
if that
see
user
who
is,
changed what.
sorry, yes, correct. Who changed
Yeah,
what?
so correct. So you can, if you look at any doc type, right? They'll usually have a field over here in settings called as track changes. Just enable this.
So does that mean if the user is on Frappe, even though we do any custom changes on React app, it will get covered within Frappe?
Yeah, because the documents
Hmm.
itself are going to be updated via either directly via the REST API or either via some custom API that you create, right? So,
Okay.
for example, if I do, I don't know what the ramifications for any of this will be, but let's say if I just change this and I hit save, right? Say you change the value of item naming by item from item code to naming series. And you can click on this and see, the exact values that were changed. So this is inbuilt. This is in Frappe itself.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Let's look at, just React. How do we structure components, right? As well as how do we measure performance? So let me pull up Raven because that's a much more complicated code base. I'll just connect my monitor again. Seems to be back online. Then I can take this there. Okay. Okay. If you look at Raven, one of the things that you'll notice is that we are doing lazy imports, right? Instead of just saying component, we're doing lazy imports. Why? If someone's already logged in, right, uh, and they go to the Raven channel, why should we load the code that's needed for the login page or the sign up page or for the forgot password page? It doesn't make any sense, right? So this is called as code splitting, wherein when the bundle is built, it doesn't generate one JavaScript file, it generates multiple, right? And when the user comes to the page, it will only load the files that are required for that particular route. And that's why you need to handle errors, which we haven't done on Raven yet, for skew protection. That is, let's say if the JavaScript file paths change, between an update, then the user, if they try to go to the login page, they'll try to access the old page, right? So yeah, again, this is one best practice that you should do. Always have your routes lazily loaded. Uh, the other thing that we do is actually, let's in our app, let's do bench get app. So I'll show the number of files that it generates. Okay, look at the number of files that it generated, right? I mean, 1 KB, 2 KB. This is called code splitting, right? I would highly recommend this if you want to, load, because normally what happens is that single page apps is like, they become very large, and you might have a bundle of 2, 3 MB and they do not load on slow networks at all. So this is recommended. Um, okay, once we have that, I'll restart bench and then I'll just do bench. Okay. Move this over here. Okay, cool. Is this not refreshed? Yeah. Uh, attached to name must be. Hmm. Sure what that is. Attached to name must be a string or an integer. I think it's got something to do with the photo. We'll have to check. That seems to be a bug. Anyway, how do you? If I look at the code base, right? This is not very different from what we have, and Raven is also a very different app in the sense that it doesn't have a lot of forms and stuff, right? So you wouldn't really see, except for the login page, maybe you wouldn't see any forms. But there are a lot of performance, stuff that we've done in this, right? We wanted to cover events, right? Like, custom events. In this case, we have done that. Let me show you what happens when someone sends a message on Raven. If someone sends a message, we send the entire message content, right, as a real-time event. So, um, on update, so see, we publish an event called message created. I hope you guys know how to publish real-time socket events, right? In the payload, we send the entire message, right? But we channelize it. So we say, okay, only to the particular Raven channel. Remember that normally I mean, we could have done this using list update or something, but that list update that Frappe provides doesn't really cover, filters, right? I only want Raven messages that are sent for this particular channel. So what we do is that if a Raven message is created, go to the doc type Raven channel and, you know, push an event to Raven channel. Naturally, on our chat stream, now this is a hook that just handles the chat stream. What we have done is that we listen to the Raven channel, not to the Raven message, right? And then we have event listeners for everything. So if there's a new message that's created, right, we mutate it similar to what we did. We do a lot of sorting and all of that, right? We mutate it and then we scroll to that message, right? If the user is already down to the bottom, we scroll to the message. So we do not, earlier what was happening was that, let's say a channel had 100 messages, we used to load 100 messages at once, right? And then once a new message comes in, we got an event, we did not send the message during the event, right? And we reloaded 101 messages using that API, right? We stopped doing that, and now everything runs via socket. So if there is a socket event, the we look at the message content and we just append it to our chat stream, right? Same thing for message edited, message deleted. So these are all custom events, and you'll see that we're not using use Frappe document event listener over here. We do use Frappe document event listener here, and then over here we are just listening to the message created event. We know that the message created event will be for the Raven channel, right? So yeah, this is how you can listen to custom events. You can publish custom events and then listen to custom events. uh, that's one. I'll look at how do we measure performance. So let's go to Raven and I'll open up DevTools. So one of the best ways to actually measure performance is just do slow 3G, right? Throttle it to slow 3G and see how fast your app loads, right? Now this was pretty fast for slow 3G. So if I do fast 3G, it will be even faster. The reason being it's all cached. So you can see that all of these requests might be pending, right? But it's all cached. So that's why it seems fast, but it's not actually fast. The other way to do it is look at performance. Now, normally when we are programming, we program in, extremely powerful laptops, but our users don't. So I usually throttle it to 4x slowdown, right? And then see, how fast or slow the app feels, right? So earlier this was very slow, uh, but now I guess it's fine. And then you can also do a network slowdown over here as well. So this is another way to actually notice, any performance bottlenecks, because otherwise you wouldn't even know where to look. Once you know where to look, what you can do is you can go to the application, not sorry, the application tab, but you can go to the components tab, right? The components tab, this is React DevTools, just install React DevTools to get this. It will tell you the entire tree of components that you have, right? And for every component, it will tell you who rendered it, what are the values, etc. Yeah. But the main thing is the profiler, right? Uh, Profiler is only supported on the development environment. So the 1026 slash, yeah. So let's go to the profiler. Oh, okay, I need to start the dev server. This. Okay. Now this time it will run in 8081. And yeah, it won't run because I have to set up socket and everything. Maybe I'll just shut this bench off and use the bench that I already always use. Uh, okay. I don't know. I think it's 8025 or whatever. Okay. Cool. So to measure performance, we do inspect, we go to profiler, and then we just start profiling, right? And then you can do wherever you see the perceived slowness, you can handle that. So in this case, let's say I want to profile the viewing of this invoice, right? So I did my action and then I stop it. It will create a flame graph, right? It will rank it. Uh, and then you can see where the user took time or the React took time to render, right? Now in this case you won't see a performance penalty because, well, it's pretty performant over here. But let me record this, refresh the page. Actually, sorry, record this, refresh the page, and stop the recording. Yeah. Now here you'll get to know which all components are taking the most amount of time. For example, this doc type card is taking a lot of time, right? How do I handle this? Yeah, this doc type card is taking a lot of time to render. Why is that? We'll have to check. Uh, you'll see all of these components that are there, right? And out of that, the most amount of time is being taken by the context menu, right? But apart from the context menu, what else is there? There are so many nodes that you wouldn't even know where to look. And look at, yeah, see, that was ranked. Now in my flame graph, I can see which, layer took the most amount of time. Apparently, it's nothing. It's just the tooltips. This is a bug that we know of. Tooltips shouldn't take so much, time to render. This is a bug that's in Radix themes, not in Radix UI primitives, so not in Chat-CN hopefully. But these tooltips are taking a lot of time to render, right? Similarly, if I again go back to ranked, you'll see context menus take a lot of time. So context menus are this, right? So they take a lot of time. Click on context menu, go to flame graph, right? And it will automatically pull up, what took time. Again, doc type card takes the most amount of time. So we need to optimize this somehow. Uh, but I honestly don't know what the solution is because most of the time is actually being taken by tooltips. There's literally nothing else that's actually taking time over here. So if we get rid of the tooltips, maybe that will improve the performance. The other thing that you need to know is that this is very subjective in the sense that you need to profile 10, 20 times to actually get a sense of, if it's even accurate or not, right? Sometimes it tells you something else is responsible. So yeah, now it's saying that the entire app is is slow. Now see the doc type card doesn't even come up, right? Yeah, it does come up now over here, but it's the same doc type. But is this one? It's not this one. So that's weird. Anyway, you can then, go into doc type card and then see, okay, what's actually causing these issues of performance, right? Currently, Raven is pretty performant because we cleaned up a lot of the code. Earlier, this wasn't even coming up. Earlier, this was what the performance hit was actually from the chat stream itself, right? Each and every message was causing a lot of problems. So yeah, I mean that's I don't know what else. I mean, I do this and I use the profiler, right? Those are the two things, or the recorder, sorry. Those are the two things that I use to measure performance of a React app or of a Frappe app. Oh, 8,000, this won't work. So recorder. Yeah, then I can start a recorder. I don't want background jobs. And let me say that I only want API slash method slash Raven, right? And I do start recording, right? Once that's happening, I refresh the page, and I can refresh the page multiple times just so that the API calls are triggered multiple times, right? And then I stop it. Uh, then this is ranked by duration, right? So you see this particular API is taking a lot of time. Get current Raven user. It's taking about 75 seconds. And one of the main reasons is because it's getting Raven user order by creation, right? I don't know why it needs to do this, but oh, okay, it's going to tab doc type to get it. So yeah, I look at this, right? And then I try to figure out, okay, what took the most amount of time. Now, the get current user only seems to be slow initially, and I think that's because it's getting the meta for that doc type. But after that, I don't see it again, right? Chat stream get messages, for example, this is taking time, about 45 milliseconds. Earlier, these were taking like 200, 300 milliseconds, so it's much faster. But then they're saying that this is the slow one, but in this case, it's actually using an index, so I don't know why this would be like, I don't think that this can be made any faster. So anyway, you'll only notice these issues, you'll only start using the recorder when you start noticing, performance issues, right? Uh, so yeah, all of these methods I use very basics, like just the very very basics, whatever's available out of the box, the React Dev Tools and the recorder, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Do you have any questions? Because I do not really have, like, I can answer specifics. I can't, give like uh, very vague answers, right? Because very specific answers I can give. So, any questions? Uh, Anything really? Because the goal really is that it's not to complete this app, because that app will take a lot of time to complete. The goal is that you are able to make apps using Frappe and React after this training. So, any questions? No. Frappe version won't impact React app at all. It's just that the use search hook might not work in version 14, but you can make your own hook, right? Similar. Use, actually, it will work. It will just throw a TypeScript error. Yes, so yeah, I'll explain that. Let me shut this bench down, right? I actually have an idea of something that we can build now, and I think it'll be pretty cool. So yeah, I think this is fine. Let me close this, close this, close this, close this, close this, close this. Okay, cool. Uh, can you explain what went wrong with the mutated list yesterday? So I think that was on the tasks. I'll show what's happening there, right? Okay. So let's go to tasks and I'll remove this. Okay. So now that that's working, let's see. Uh, so when we added search, right, as soon as I search something, it makes an API call, right, to fetch the list. The problem is that to make that API call, I had to change the SWR key. Now the SWR key cannot be static task list because then it will just read from the cache, right? So if I just make this task list, search will not work anymore. So if I refresh, search won't work because it's reading from the cache. The key never changed, right? So, and this is because we are using a key. If we don't use a key, this won't be a problem in the first place, right? But let's say that we, yeah, we now have this, and so our filters, etc., are working. Uh, all of that's working. The problem is that when we made this priority selector over here, priority selector, right? Let's just say that we do what we had earlier was we had this as the code, right? Wherein we were returning update doc to the updater function. But in our SWR key, we only had task list, right? This is what we had yesterday. Uh, Problem was that now search, etc., is working fine. That's all right. So, search, this is all working fine. API calls are being made. But if I make a change to, let's say, hi, you know, then the API call is not made because there is no SWR cache with the key just task list. It's now an array, right? So we actually have to now mutate all the cached versions of our list. And so for that, instead of passing in a string to the SWR key or a direct value, we can pass in uh, an a function. The function says, okay, for every key where the key is an array and the first element in the key is and in the array is task list, right? Run this updater. We did this yesterday and it seemed to work, but if you look at the API calls, right? See the number of update calls it's making. This is incorrect, right? It shouldn't be making so many API calls to update it. And that's because we were calling update doc directly over here. So what we did, the solution was that we just call the promise first and then over here just return the promise itself. So now if I make a change, only one API call, see, for task number two. And then for task number one, there's another one, only one API call. So even though there are multiple versions, of of the cache, right? It's not making multiple API calls. That's the whole solution, right? So just the promise needed to be encapsulated out, so that this is called once, and then we return a dot then uh, to this. So yeah, I think this will still be an example. Yeah. Okay, cool. Uh, Background jobs and scheduler jobs. I don't know, it'll be a little out of context here. Okay, let's cover that tomorrow. What I had an idea about is that let's build a component, and a fairly complex component, right? So, how many of you have, not liked, let's say, this list view? For the simple reason that this list view only limits you to a certain number of columns. So if you wanted to do list settings, you can only have at best 10, right? And I can add more columns, I guess. So I can add, let's say last login, something else, maybe birth date, mobile number, whatever, right? Email. I can add a bunch of columns over here, but again, look at the width that it's restricted by. I cannot scroll, I cannot move these around directly, right? So if I go to list settings again, I would have to do this or something like this, right? So let's build a better list component. But why calling update doc calls API one time? Well, because you're only updating one document, right? Why would it call it multiple times? Uh, so yeah, it wouldn't call it multiple times, right? I'm only updating the priority once. So for this particular task, so it should only call it once. The API is to update, right? And what we are doing is that we are not calling the fetch for the lists because we don't want to. Okay, so let's build that component. But for that, to build that component, we have to first decide upon a list, or a library that renders, grids. I have a few options. Maybe you have also seen some options. One is ShatCN's data table component. I mean, it looks pretty, but it's got the same issues, right? I cannot drag this. Yeah, TanStack is the same thing. TanStack is headless, right? So this is also using TanStack table, but I cannot drag and drop this, so I don't know. This doesn't seem correct to me. Uh, so this is one option. The other is something called as a glide data grid, and this is a pretty cool data grid. If you look at its example, right, it's got grouped lists, and I can drag and drop. I can resize. We could potentially use this maybe, right? That's one. The other is AG grid. So AG Grid has like the enterprise versions, at least it has like crazy stuff like you can create charts and stuff in it, right? Which is even better. Um, but yeah, if you want to see it in light mode, this is how it looks. And these are all editable, by the way, right? So we won't make the editing part, uh, but we can make something similar. Let's look at the demos over here. I don't know why it's running so slow. Is my internet slow? Is my stream fine? Yeah, Sync Fusion Data Grid is also a good example. Okay, so maybe AG Grid's website itself is slow. Maybe. Uh, let's try Glide Data Grid. What we have done for one of our projects is that we've actually, this is like a fifth or sixth table component. Uh, we started with a regular table component using Chakra UI, then tried to add like column filters. Then we used stack table. Then we were like, okay, it's not really solving a lot of the problems. Then we went to glide data grid, and then finally, we went to the AG grid, right? And we use AG grid right now, but for this example, I think we can use uh, this. So let's see. I don't know how this will look like, but apparently it's simple. It looks simple to me, right? Looks simple to me. So let's try doing this. Let's install this glide data grid. Where is scope? I'll just say, I don't know what all changes we made, right? So added error handling, routing, and 404 page. Maybe I think that's all we did today. So, okay. We'll do yarn add and then we'll add glide data grid. Now, see, one of the main things about Frappe is that everything's in the doc type. So you actually have all of the data required to render the entire grid. You know what fields there will be. So we'll actually make a very generic page for now, right? So I was talking about that page earlier, right? Wherein in main.tsx, what we'll do is we'll say path, and instead of task and all of that, let's make doc type. Perfect. And then element, yeah, element, we'll figure that out later. So let's do doc type. Uh, and they have all of this. They want us to get these as well. So I don't know about that, but we'll see all of that later. For now, let's make a doc type list page. So it will be in our pages directory, right? Let's call the folder doc type itself, right? And then let's call it list.tsx, right? tsrafc, right? Okay. So here we'll just say list. Yeah, perfect. So we need to get the param, right? We need to get the doc type first. So let's do that. We'll say we won't do doc type right now. We'll get the params from use params. It's again a hook and React router DOM. Uh, and here, let's see if we get doc type. So let's go to slash user, right? See, we are getting that, and we do get the doc type name. Perfect. So we have the doc type ID now, right? So now we need to first fetch what? We need to fetch the meta, right? And we need to fetch the meta in such a way that we can actually show all of these columns, right? Now, if you look at Frappe, 8026, actually, it's okay. Let's look at Frappe, and they have a doc type meta API. I'll tell you the problem with that API as well, but look at this API, right? It takes in the doc type, and then it takes uh, it returns, some user settings. We'll ignore that for now, but it also returns not only the main doc type, that is the user, which is the first element in this API, but it also returns the doc type definitions for the child tables here, right? So we'll use this particular API to get our doc type meta, right? For that, we'll create a hook, and in the hook, we'll say use doc type meta. Okay. In use doctype meta, we'll just pass it the doctype name. That's it. Right. I'll I'll first try it the simple way. That is, we do use Frappe get call, and I'll have to copy. Oh, okay. That's nice. It already knows what to do. Frappe.desk, and then we can say doctype. And I think there was some other parameter that was being passed, right? It was like with parent. We do not care about the timestamp. So with parent one, and then we get the data here. Okay. Let's see if that works, right? So we have this. We'll get the doctype meta. Use doctype meta. We pass it the doctype, and for now, let's not do anything. We just pass it the doctype, right? And use doctype meta can be, let's say, if it's undefined, if we want to handle that, what what should we do? If we want to handle, for undefined, like if doctype is undefined, we don't want to make that API call, right? What do we do? I explained this like 45 minutes ago or something. Anyone? Correct. Null. Yes. So we'll say doc type. If it's there, then maybe we can have a key of our own, right? We can set up a key of our own, and I was thinking we keep our key something like this: doc type meta doc type, right? And then otherwise, if the doc type is there, otherwise it's null, right? And that way, actually, we'll get rid of this. Sorry. Okay. See, we got this, right? This is what use doctype meta is printing. We have the metadata now, right? The metadata will have all of the fields. It will also have not only, yeah, it will have the fields, and it will have the fields in the right order. It will also have, for every field, it will have things like, uh, in list view or not, etc. Right? So we'll actually use that to handle this. So now the problem, for now, we'll only work on the main list. We won't allow them to add child table fields, because then otherwise there'll be duplicate data everywhere. But even then, one of the problems is that it doesn't return just the meta of the main doc type of user. It returns it for the child tables as well, right? Has role, block module, etc. And uh, the problem is that, let's say that I'll tell you another frustration that a lot of people have is with the child tables, right? These child tables, they only support a certain number of columns. You cannot have unlimited columns, or you cannot have scroll and stuff, right? What if you wanted to make those, dynamic as well, right? Then in that case, you would need the doc type meta for, let's say, user email, whatever this child table doc type name is. Uh, and the thing is that it's cached using this. So, what Frappe does is that it stores everything in locals. Uh, let's see in Frappe, if I go to console and I say locals, see, it stores everything in locals, and then it has it over here in doc type. And then in doc type, it loads everything up over here, right? So we also want to do something similar, right? Wherein we want to add everything to locals, all of these doc types into locals. Eventually, not now. For now, we're just concerned with the parent doc type, but you would use the same API. But you would do something like, if it's in locals, so if the doc type is available in locals, then do not fetch and return, right? You would do something like that. Why? Because sometimes you might want to use doctype meta for a particular child table doctype as well. And then this wouldn't work. So yeah, let's return the meta for the parent doctype for now. And by the way, locals is nothing but something that's, linked to the window object, right? So it's just that. Or maybe it's not even linked to the window fully. So yeah. Uh, we'll return this, but in fact, I'll say doctype meta, and then I'll do data dot. I don't know how it's returned. Not get doc type. It's returned in docs, right? So data dot docs zeroth element, right? We got this. So we have the doc type meta now, and we have is loading. Perfect. Now, once we have the doc type meta, we can then figure out what the columns would be, right? So with the doc type meta, we can, I'll create a separate hook maybe, or maybe for now, just a function that gets us the columns from the doc type meta, right? So actually, it will just be filter, right? We'll filter every field, and maybe we only want to show the fields that are marked as in list view. So let's look at that. There are fields here in list view, right? Or do we not want to filter and want to show everything? We can also do that. What would you prefer? Like we show everything, all fields, and maybe then the user, yeah, show all now, right? So let's map it, and let's return it in the format that these guys need, like this, right? Title and ID. So the most basic configuration is just give it the title and the ID. So we already know what the title and the ID is going to be, right? The title is going to be field.label, and the ID is not this. The ID is going to be field.field name. Let's see if that works. I don't. There is a label, right? Hopefully, yeah, label, and okay, cool. We actually need to filter a few things as well. So we'll create a new hook called as use, or actually let's do it here first because I don't know if that will work. So we'll create a use memo, put in doc type meta here. The other thing that we need to do, by the way, is in doc type meta, we need to, shut off all the revalidations, right? Do not revalidate if stale, because revalidations make no sense. Doc type meta is not going to change at all. Revalidate on mount is true. Actually, let's not explicitly make it true. Revalidate on reconnect false. So all the revalidations are off. Doc type meta. So if there is doc type meta, then return something, something, whatever. Else return an empty array, right? Okay. Uh, if doc type meta, right? Now, we actually need to filter, and we also need to, map. right? So we'll say const fields is equal to an empty array, right? And yeah, if field, right, in doctype meta.fields, if the field is hidden, so if it's not hidden, then we don't do anything. So hide, is it hidden? Yeah. So if the field is not hidden, actually, let's do something like if the field is hidden, continue, right? If the field, and we'll have to, come up with uh, layout field types. Layout field types would be something like we cannot show tab break on a list view, right? That'll be one. We cannot show a section break on a list view. We cannot show fold. Uh, we cannot show table for now. We cannot show table. I think it's multi-select. What else? So buttons, we cannot show that, right? Column breaks. Uh, we cannot show button. We cannot show what else? HTML. Can't show image. Okay, the reason why we cannot show HTML and image is because they do not actually hold any values, right? They're just used for like showing stuff on the form. So those are like form elements. Is there anything else that I'm missing that we cannot probably show on a list view? Tab break, section break, folds, column break, button. We can show a select field, right? Because the select field will have a value. Like in the database, we can only show fields that are associated with the field in the database, right? Because we'll have to query those fields. So, hmm, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. If we find something else, we'll see, right? So if layout field types dot includes field type, then continue, right? We can't do that. Else, we know what to do. So we'll do fields dot push, but over here we need ID, which will be field dot name. Oh, wait, not field dot name. It'll be field dot field name. Field dot field name, and I think it was title, right? Field dot label. Let's do this and let's see if we have columns or not. Um, and as far as data is concerned, let's fetch everything for now, right? We will not do that later, but use frappe get doc list. Let's say doc type, and over here, yeah, fields could be, columns dot map. Uh, oh, okay. And then I need to return fields. Yeah. Columns dot map. I don't know why you would need to do that. No, just columns dot map called ID. Limit page length, it's already there. It's by default, it's there. So we also have data now, right? And then we can call this, where is the glide data grid? So it needed the data, we have that. It needed the column, it had that. Uh, okay, I think we can do this, get cell content. So get cell content, and this will all come from, item, and all of that will come from restart TS server. Hmm. It's not as straightforward, huh? Yeah, that's why I like AG grid. Now I remember. Yeah, so the problem is that this get cell content needs to be static so that its reference doesn't change a lot. And if its reference doesn't change a lot, it's asking for data. Now the data would need to go over here. That's a problem. Um, and it's giving us, yeah, okay. For now it's fine, but we'll change this to an AG grid, I guess. So this will be data and it's just there's no indexes as such. This will just be columns. I installed Glide Data Grid, right? So why is this not coming up? Where are they importing this from? By the way, I need to do this. And let's see, I mean, grid cell kind, these are all fine. So it's getting the data row. Okay, it's getting the row and then now it's looking at the columns, which is weird because, okay, this should do it. And then item is also fine. Use callback is also fine. We'll replace all of this with AG grid. AG grid is far simpler. So actually, it's not far simpler, but I mean the static one is at least simpler. So data editor and then rows. Why is this data dot length? Okay. Okay, we should have a page. Oh, okay, we need to restart the dev server because I installed a new app or a new library. Hmm. Okay, we need that Lodash and all of that. Hmm. It did tell me to add it. I thought that we wouldn't need it. Yarn, add, mark, Lodash, and React responsive carousel. Okay. Then yarn dev. There was an error. Data.includes is not a function. Data.includes is not a function. So where is data.includes? There is no data.includes. Causing issues somewhere over. Hmm. Okay, let's do this. If data, then only do we render this, right? Else we return null or something. Yeah, something like that. If there's data, then only do we. Nope, not that issue. Okay, you know what? Let's get off Glide and let's see if AG Grid is available. The website is so slow. Jeez. I mean, we've done most of the things that we needed to do, right? I think so. We've gotten our doc type list, we got the fields, we got the columns. So we have most of the things. Yeah, okay. AG grid React. Let's do this. Control C. I have these commands, right? Let's do yarn remove and yarn add AG grid React. Okay. Hopefully this is much simpler. The way that it needs the data is that it needs, I mean, this we have, it needs field and label, I think. So instead of ID and title, we can do field and what else? Call defs. So we have that. Let's see. We can import all of these. And I know for a fact that we need to return these as call def array, which is, I think it comes from, but I don't know what the name for this will be, but let's just call it header name. I think it's header name or header or something like that. But we have a list of fields now, and then all we need to do is do something like this. Oh, okay. Is that fine? AG grid React cannot be used as a JSX component. Why not? It is a JSX component. Yeah, it was header name and then it was field. Okay. Uh, AG grid React, AG grid React. Column defs will just be columns. I don't know why TypeScript is throwing an error, but let's see if that works. Oh, okay. Yeah, and whenever you install new packages, sometimes what happens is that there is a wheat cache somewhere in your node modules. Here, just delete that. Sometimes this happens with wheat. So, especially when you like remove packages. Installing new packages usually doesn't do that, but removing does. Okay, perfect. Now see, we have something, right? We only have 4 records, so we don't have a lot of data. But if I were to go to a route of, let's say, currency, see, nice. And we have set the height, so we can do that as well. We can say 100 VH for now. I think there are more currencies, right? Oh, okay. We actually need to give it a proper height. Yeah. Oh, no, no, no. Got it. It only fetches 20. So, fine. Let it be 100 VH, right? And in fact, we can, we can do things like, Like we can have an h1 over here that says doc type, and yeah, we now have a list. Great. And do this p4 or something. Yeah, see? And these are all adjustable now. Hopefully I can move them. Yes. Uh, and then let's say if you wanted to, format these things. So for example, this could be a checkbox, right? Enabled. It's showing up as 0 or 1. You can do that using the value formatter or the cell content in a cell component. So the cell renderer, I'm pretty sure there is a cell renderer for checkboxes there, but you'll have to create these columns like that, right? And so yeah, any questions so far? This is a very complex piece of you know component, right? Like this is by far one of the most complex components that we've built. The link field, this, and the child table. This in this we have other things like being able to select which columns, being able to add filters and stuff, and then obviously formatting. Each one of these. Some of these are links, some of these are numbers. So yeah, any questions? Anyone questions or something? Uh, I mean, we will have to build those, right? But it is editable. I mean, think if we do editable as one or something, it is editable usually. Let's see, editing. I mean, we'll have to wire that up, right? That whenever there's an edit, do something. Yeah, editable, true. Oh, yeah. See? But obviously, it's not going back to the database. That you'll have to wire up, and you can read. See, even with Glide Data Grid, we were able to, achieve editing and stuff. The problem was with the grouping and all of that. And if you look at the AG Grid Enterprise version, right, they have even more stuff. Like they have like you can make charts and stuff. I don't know if you saw that over here, but see this example. You can remove columns from here. Then you can have row groups. So let's say if I want to group by language, I can just drag it over here and it's now grouped by language. How did I control the columns in the table? Well, I fetched the meta. From the meta, I then got the columns in the right format. I ignored the columns that we did not need, the layout fields, for example, right? And then, I was able to create fields. Now, see over here, what you can do is let's say that it is a date, right? And with date, you know that the date that's stored in the database is YYYMMDD, right? You can do something like value formatter, right? And then in the value formatter, since you know what column type it is, because you would know the field type. Again, Frappe has everything, right? Frappe has everything in its doc type meta. So then you can, pass in a value formatter and say, okay, I need to format it like a date, right? With those meta, you can actually make, whatever is there in the Frappe side, right? The list views, the forms, etc. You can make that in React. You're not really adding a lot of value, but think about it, right? If you were building an app and grids are an important critical part of your app, you could use something like an AG grid or a glide grid, and with just that meta, you can make really, really powerful grids, right? I can't show you what we've built because what we've built is like insane, but it's like this, right? You can group and do all of this. Uh, so yeah, and then you can look at filters. The problem is not with this, right? The problem is like right now what we have done is that we have fetched things, we're not dynamically fetching it. The actual, uh, best practice would be that if the user selected that I don't want to see any of these, right? And I only want to see, let's say, a few columns, right? In our case, let's say if they want to, only fetch 3 or 4 columns, right? Then we should actually, our SQL query should only fetch those columns, right? That's the tough part. So we did not get list view filters dynamically so far, right? We haven't done that. This is just a AG grid thing. This is what we have built. This is like the baby version of that, right? But we can add filters and we can also add sorting. So, for example, if someone has sorted this, right? Let's actually look at the sorting logic. But there are two row models in this that you would need to understand. Um, Server-side data row models. I think that was the problem, that this is only available in the enterprise version, the server-side row model. You would need the server-side row model because see, client-side row model is, it will load all of the data into the grid in one go, right? The grid can then perform filtering, sorting, grouping, pivoting, etc. Then there is server-side row model, right? It is, it's got lazy loading and all of that. And then server-side grouping and aggregation. Now, the thing is, there are two ways to do it. One is that you use the enterprise version of AG Grid for the server side. The other is you use a client side, right? But you hook into the events, right? So when a user applies a sort, you hook into the event and you go back to use Frappe get doc list and apply the sorting, right? Or if they add a filter, you apply the filter, because there's no way that you're going to fetch 10,000 rows and then filter on the client, right? Because that's what client side does. This is what we have implemented right now. We're only fetching 20 rows, but still. Uh, Ideally, you would want, it to be client side, and then, when AG Grid tells you that I've applied filtering over here or sorting over there, you go back and you update your use Frappe get doc list parameters. And if you want to, you can also use server-side rendering to do that. In that, you have things like pivoting and all of that, right? So, yeah, I think I think that's it. Like, do you have more questions? So Padu says, tomorrow can you take deploy the Frappe React app to server? Yeah, I mean, uh, what do you mean by server? Because it's already deployed technically, right? If you go to slash scope, it's already deployed. So it's got, like, there's no difference between deploying a regular Frappe app to server or a Frappe React app to server. On day one, when we did all of the build process, uh, yeah, the Frappe React app, right? On day one, when we did the build process, right, it's already building it and deploying it to your server at localhost 8026. So that's already there. Like, if you deploy it, we can do it. Can we do React Native tomorrow? I think Prathamesh can show something, right? Obviously, nothing is, like ready completely. Can you cover some part of Frappe? I would honestly recommend Hussein's course on Frappe School. It's available for free. I think it's also there on YouTube. That covers that in, very much in depth, right? So I would say, use that, because otherwise, that course itself is like 3 to 4 days. I would like to cover like more, React and Frappe things. Like, maybe build this table out even more, right? Maybe that would be helpful. Yeah, I'll cover how can we create a PWA tomorrow. When we edit a particular row or column, how can I get which record got updated and save that data in that document? Yes, so you would know the row, right? So in this, when they do editing, right? Editing, when they do editing, they will tell you the entire row, right? Now, you also need to remember that Frappe also has this. It doesn't look like this, but it has a report view. And the report view allows you to edit whatever you can edit, I think, right? I don't even know. Yeah, so this is editable, for example, right? And when you edit that, there is an API that they use. I mean, you can also do set value, but there's probably an API that you can use that handles that, right? See, yeah, it uses set value. Okay, nice. So yeah, I mean, that's already available, right? In Frappe. So you can use frappe.client.setValue, and over here you would know when stop editing has happened, and it will give you the entire rows data. So in your row data, you'll always have the name, and using that you can update the value. It depends on the library, right? So can you show us how it is looking in mobile view? I'm not sure. This, though, I'm not sure how it looks in mobile. I guess it scales like this, but obviously, you wouldn't want this experience on mobile devices. You would probably, replace this list view with something else on mobile. Next, what grid are you using in Frappe? Which grid are you talking about? The one that Frappe uses, this one? This is by Frappe itself. It should be called data grid, I think. Data table, yes. It's this. Yeah. They use this. This is, I think, built for jQuery mostly. You can use it in React, but yeah, they use this. By Bhavik. I'm not sure, Saruka. I haven't tried it, but I wouldn't. I think it should be, but again, there are better grids available that are React specific, like AG grid or Glide grid or whatever, right? Or you could build your own using TanStack and then your own UI libraries. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessary to use this, especially because it doesn't allow a lot of formatting, right? That's why the report view looks very bland, but the list view looks nice over here. So yeah. Okay, any more questions so far? Any suggestions, difference between Frappe UI versus React? Yes, so let's see, frappeui.com. Yeah. Okay. Frappe UI is Frappe UI has both the data fetching part as well as the components, right? So because they use it in so many of their apps now, so they're making this entire component library, right? So if you're using Vue, this is built using Vue.js, right? Frappe UI is built using Vue.js. So if you're using Vue, then you should use Frappe UI. If you're using React, either wire up your own data fetching, or you can use Frappe React SDK. Frappe React SDK only has data fetching part of it, data fetching and mutations and everything, right? Caching, etc. We are working on a React library for Frappe, right? But I do not know when it will be ready. Probably by the next Frappe build, if they have a Frappe build next time. So uh, probably by then. But it'll be similar to what you saw today, right? It'll be like components like link fields, uh, form components, grids, stuff like that. So yes, you can use Next.js with Frappe, right? But Next.js you'll have to deploy it separately on a separate server, and then somehow manage how to how to make the connection between the two, right? It is compatible. You'll again use OAuth, right? Will using Shatsy and make React build heavy because it creates components? Well, I mean, if you don't use Shatsian, then you would have to build your own components, and that will make it heavy. No. So the answer is no. You will need these components, right? The React build will get heavier over time, and then you need to perform code splitting, lazily loading modules using suspense to make it more performant. So yeah, Material UI is even more heavier than Shatsian because Shatsian just uses Tailwind and RadixUI. Right? Material UI is even more heavier, but you can use Material UI, you can use Chakra UI. So, yeah. So, what all do you want me to cover tomorrow? Rafael, you said, performance and best practices. Did you get your answers, or do you want me to cover something more in depth? I don't know if Rafael
Um,
is here.
no,
Oh,
that
he's
was
here.
fine, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, PWA I'll cover tomorrow. How to make your React app into a progressive web app. And what else is there? And we can, continue building some very complex components if you would like that. So Babu says, what if I want changes in backend APIs? Like which APIs? Like APIs that you yourself write? I mean, or if you want to override APIs that are available in Frappe or some other app. If you want to do that, there is a hook called override whitelisted methods or something similar, override whitelist methods or something. Right? Just check that. You can override an API using those hooks.py. Okay, I think that's it for today. Just leave your suggestions. Can we get log activity? Yeah, I already answered to Ninad, right? You can get log activity. If possible, please cover OAuth implementation. Okay, sure. Yeah, you can get it in the front end as well, right? So see, remember that if Frappe is fetching it somehow, right, on the front end, then you can also fetch it. That's it. So you just need to look at the network request, right? And I'm pretty sure this is with the doc info or get doc info or something that they fetch, right? So if Frappe is fetching it, you can also fetch it. Yes, so Prasad, I think I'll create a dummy GitHub app tomorrow and then, cover OAuth and probably add it to our app itself, right? For that API, Anupam, you will get that in get doc. See, in get doc, they have doc info. This is your all of the logs that they have for a particular record. So they use this API. Again, if you want to, replicate anything that's available over here into there, into the React interface, you just need to you need to follow the path to the backend APIs. That's it. And if you want to look at all the APIs that are available in Frappe, you can use commit, right? So over here, let's say that I want to view APIs for Frappe. Yeah, you can get that. So I think it's get doc. Yeah, there is a get doc info. You can use this, right? If you wanted to export this to a Bruno file and then, use that, you can also do that over here. Click on this and it will download a Bruno file. We'll add a copy button later, right? So this is get doc info. You can call this um, and see. It's commit.frappe.cloud. So, and then just click on the try commit button. Abhishek, I don't think that that'll be something that I would be able to cover in this course, right? YouTube account in React and mobile app using CodeStrick Studio. I've done YouTube account in React Ionic mobile app. I do not know what CodeStrick Studio is, so I won't be able to cover that. Okay, if that's all, then uh, we can conclude today's session. If you have suggestions, just send it over on the chat, right? Because I'm looking for topics. I'm thinking that maybe tomorrow we create a fairly complex, either a link field or a grid, right? Either of those two, and we'll also cover a few of those topics like PWAs and stuff, right? PWA wouldn't take time, but yes. Um, Maybe building a component itself, would be quite complex and challenging. Um, Scheduler jobs, etc. I would say, Saruka, for that, just follow Hussein's course because those are like Frappe framework fundamentals, right? So Hussein has those on his channel, right? As well as on Frappe School. So he covers that in depth, right? He would explain scheduler jobs as well as background jobs and reports, dashboards, etc. Okay, if that's all, then we can conclude. Thank you guys for joining, and yeah, I'll see you tomorrow.